welcome to another Mjolnir at the Movies Intermission. This is the first Mjolnir at the Movies of the new year, and as you've probably gathered, as it's an intermission, Neil and James are not with me as they're on holiday, so it's left to me, David Yorkshire, to fill in. And of course that means that there's no fancy music or fancy graphics or anything like that. It's just me. And what I thought I would look at, because I've just watched it actually, is the latest and hopefully the last Star Wars film, The Rise of Skywalker as it is. And, well, I'm going to be very fair to it actually. I'm going to be very fair to it because I'm going to look at it in terms of filmmaking first, as I always do. I always give it its fair due in terms of filmmaking. And then I'm going to look at the politics of it, or I may put the two together at times, actually, because the two will inevitably coincide. But, as I say, I'm going to give it its fair view. I think that J.J. Abrams, who's returned as director for this particular episode, because he was there for episode 7, of course, and now he's back for episode 9 after the failure of Rian Johnson. And Rian Johnson left him some enormous snookers on, and he did not begin episode 9 in a very good place, having had Luke Skywalker killed off and his character completely assassinated by Rian Johnson, and of course Han Solo was killed off in episode 7, although he makes a cameo return. So I think that Abrams has quite a bit of clout given some of the cameos and returns that we've got in this film actually. We see a very short cameo by Wedge Antilles, which is the first film that he's been in since Return of the Jedi. And also Warwick Davis comes in there, although you won't really see him because he's in the suit of Wicket the Ewok. But these are very brief cameos. We'll come on to those a little later. But yes, certainly he did get some of the star power back, which he had to do because, of course, no one likes the new characters. And the big return, of course, was Ian McDiarmid as Emperor Palpatine. And I think that the film could not have worked had he not managed to get Palpatine back or McDiarmid back. But he did. And it makes a big difference, to be quite honest, because the films prior to this one, the two of the prior sequels, if you like, episode 7, episode 8, they certainly lacked gravitas. None of these new characters have any gravitas. They have no theatrical presence whatsoever, if you look at it. Not like the old characters. Even Mark Hamill, who of course has grown, played a young character in the first Star Wars trilogy. But even when he was a young character, he had a certain presence, and the same with Carrie Fisher and Han Solo. They all had a certain screen presence that these new characters completely lack. And these new characters, of course, have often been chosen, shall we say that they're ciphers for certain political movements. Of course, Boyega, this Negro, is there to get the old diversity casting in there. And Daisy Ridley is a cipher for feminism, and we know this, of course, because Kathleen Kennedy was seen dressing all her female employees in these t-shirts stating that the Force is female, which kind of goes against the spirit of how, and literally the spirit, of how the Force was intended by its creator as a concept, George Lucas. And George Lucas, of course, famously described the Disney executives as white slavers. Perhaps that white should, however, be in triple parentheses. But anyway, what of course has happened as well is that we have still no white male heroes. And this is indeed problematic. This is one of the great problems of the film, because of course a large chunk of its audience are going to be white males, and they still haven't learnt this. In fact, one of the other cameos that they've brought back, that J.J. Abrams has brought back, and J.J. Abrams is of course Jewish, and so he as well has been very open about his anti-white agenda in the films. Said that, you know, there were far too many white faces on the screens and so on, and in films and everything, and that he was going to change all that. And so the other cameo that he's brought back, you know, all the audience were screaming for a white male hero, having had Luke Skywalker killed off and so on. And so what does he do? He brings back Lando Calrissian, played by Billy D. Williams. And so again, we have one of the old cast back, but again, it's a black face. Where are the white faces? Well, the white faces, of course, are on Emperor Palpatine's side. We get more gravitas, actually. One of the things that was indeed problematic, again, in the first two films, and I think that J.J. Abrams did at least learn a little lesson from that with General Hux. And General Hux, of course, is this ginger-haired character who people of J.J. Abrams' tribe don't particularly like. But this General Hux was a bit of a clown. He was meant to be evil and yet a clown at the same time, and that doesn't work. Again, you're lacking gravitas, and people cannot take it seriously. But J.J. Abrams, he's learned here, and so we have this higher general, this Price, as he's called, who is played by Richard E. Grant, Lieutenant General Price he's called, and he's the sort of second in command below either the Emperor or Kylo Ren. It's sort of pretty much reprising Peter Cushing's role as Grand Moff Tarkin almost, and that works actually. That works quite well. But again, you know, you've certainly got the politics involved there. If you look at the rebels, they are all the major characters are either female or diverse, meaning of course non-white. There are white males in there, but they are always peripheral characters. Now, in the First Order, who are the bad guys, the reverse is true. So you have all white males in positions of authority, and then you'll have the odd Negro character or the odd woman as a peripheral character, and that certainly is a statement of politics within the film. And people are not stupid. They've seen this. And so, I mean, the box office gross for it so far is, according to Wikipedia, $774.8 million off a budget of $275 million. That is not good. And certainly for a Star Wars film, that is not good. That is not a success. So it's made a little less actually than 3 times its budget, which when you factor in all the expenditure on actually showing the film, advertising, everyone taking certain cuts from that box office gross, the film companies and so on, the picture houses and everything. That is not a success. A film these days of that magnitude has to make at least 3 times its revenue, at least 3 times its budget, I should say. So it's people have turned off from Star Wars. These people have destroyed what could not be destroyed. And just to put that into perspective, that Star Wars was an enormous success, and they have turned it into something that is no longer successful. And that is a funny thing. I'm going to come on to something about business in a general video, because some of the laws of business are actually being broken. But anyway, that's for another video entirely. One thing I will say is that Kelly Marie Tran, you remember her, she plays Rose, this Asiatic woman, this Far Eastern Oriental. She has been reduced to a minute of screen time, and that is obviously extremely deliberate. And she was really put in there, let's make no bones about it. I've talked about this before. She was put in there with an eye towards the Chinese market, and they failed with it, especially when there was this kiss with this Negro character, which wouldn't have gone down well with a Chinese audience at all. And so what they've done, of course, is because she was not a very good character at all, and Tran is not a very good actress at all, and she's not aesthetically pleasing. And so what they have done is they have basically gotten rid of her. And yet, at the same time, they've griped about it. They've again projected this onto the audience, that this is the audience's fault somehow, because they're always blaming the audience. We want to serve you this shit, and yet you the audience are complaining that you're eating shit. What's wrong with you? So this is the craziness of how these people are thinking, but this shows their arrogance and their conceitedness, and that they are completely out of touch with ordinary people, which they are, of course, because they sort of live in a bubble. And apparently this Kelly Marie Tran, she became the target of online harassment, and so on, and the critics have said that the filmmakers caved in and basically wrote her out because the audiences didn't want to. Well, inevitably, if you want to make a film that is successful, you cater to your audience. And the audience did not like her character, or what she represented, because of the politics of what she represented. So these people are just living in another world. Carrie Fisher also becomes a cipher for feminism. Now, the Princess Leia character, of course, was a very strong female role. It always has been. But we have never been given the impression that she was overbearing and bombastic. Well, that's not really true, actually. She was overbearing and bombastic, but was shown to be so. And the fault that they have made, both Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams, with these 3 films, is that they've actually taken her, made her bombastic and so on, but refused to critique that, refused to criticize that. She was always brought down to earth by the Han Solo character, so that there was always that tension between them, but she could never sort of become too high and mighty. And that is completely gone. And you get this scene, of course, where She is training as a Jedi, and of course she beats Luke Skywalker in a lightsaber duel, even though her eyes are covered and so on. And again, this empowering women has gone to the nth level of ridiculousness, and people are tired of it. And we've got the Rey character as well, and it's just being so pushed in your face that the audiences are tired of this. Again, the audiences are not going to eat shit forever. They're going to say, no, I don't want any more of this shit. And that is inevitably what has happened. In the end, what we have, if you look at the end, and this is meant to be our happy ending, all the important white male characters are dead. And this is particularly telling as well because you have Kylo Ren, who he comes back to being Ben Solo from Kylo Ren and converts back to the light side of the Force, rejects the dark side, and there's a kiss scene between Rey and him, although there again in this kiss scene one notices that he has to wait for Rey to initiate that kiss scene, which is the reverse, of course, of the masculine-feminine dichotomy, where the male is more active and the female more passive. So again, there's politics involved there, and the reverse of the traditional Hollywood kiss. But what is interesting is that he then dies, because J.J. Abrams could not allow him to live. He could not allow a strong white male character to live in his happy ending. And what you have as the real ending, which should have been that kiss, there should have been the kiss, and they live happily ever after, that should have been it. And I think that had that happened, they would have gotten away with all the other shit. But they didn't. J.J. Abrams couldn't let that lie, had to kill him off, and then have Rey as this super empowered, lone woman figure. Sisters are doing it on themselves with a golden lightsaber. This golden beam of energy at the end, and that is his happy ending. And so I think that will we see another Star Wars film? Certainly not for some time. I think that they will have to reboot the whole series and forget about that trilogy if it is to succeed again. But I don't think that they can do it because they're so committed to their SJW politics. And so I hope that is the end of Star Wars. Well, I think I've talked enough. I wish you all a happy new year, and I hope that you will subscribe and share this and our other little podcasts that we have done over the past couple of years now. I think we've been going, and obviously the algorithms do not favor us, so if you can favor us, that would be very nice of you. And hopefully James and Neil will be back with me very soon. Bye for now.